Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mindstalk, the first podcast where the world's best ideas speak your language. You can switch to your preferred language in the settings of the video. Enjoy the interview. The partner of Mindstalk podcast is XTV. XTB, where your money works.
Everything that we do as human beings, everything we do, we only do for one reason, and that is the desire to escape discomfort. 90% of the time that we check our device, it's because of an uncomfortable emotional state. The word addiction is addictio, from the Latin meaning slave. When we believe that we are enslaved, we are addicted to these devices, it tells us there's nothing we can do. And when you tell people there's nothing they can do, guess what? They believe it. And so what do people do when they believe there's nothing to be done? Nothing.
Our today's guest is Nir Eyal. Nir Eyal writes, consults, and teaches at the intersection of psychology, technology, and human potential. He is the author of 2 international bestsellers, Hooked and Indistractable, which have sold over 1 million copies and been translated into more than 30 languages. And his new book, Beyond Belief, is coming out this March. Enjoy the interview. Hello everyone, welcome to Mindstalk podcast. Our today's guest is Nir Eyal. Welcome on the show, Nir.
Nice to meet you. Great to be here. Thank you.
Let's jump into escaping discomfort. This is something that really resonated with me when I was watching your interviews. I would like to get to know how human behavior is really made up. Why do people do things that we really do? Is it really just about escaping discomfort?
It is. But that's not the way most people think about it. I think most people think about human motivation as telling people what to do and why they should do it. Carrots and sticks. You've probably heard this metaphor before, that people are kind of like donkeys, that you can motivate them with things that feel good, that we all want pleasure, and we all avoid pain. But that is not actually true, at least not in the brain. Now, it's a nice metaphor, but in reality, everything that we do as human beings, everything we do, we only do for one reason, and that is the desire to escape discomfort. So even if you think about it, wanting to feel good, craving, desire, lusting, hunger, all of these things to feel good are psychologically destabilizing. So the fact that I want to feel good, the wanting is painful. There's an old song called Love Hurts, and it's exactly true. That's the way the brain gets us to act, is by making this uncomfortable sensation that then we seek to avoid, that spurs us into action. So the seat of motivation is always discomfort. And so that's why a big revelation for me in my work around Indistractable was realizing that if all human behavior is spurred by a desire to escape discomfort, that means that time management is pain management, that money management is pain management, that weight management, it's all just pain management.
Wow. So for example, when I'm bored, I'm looking forward to let's say to turn on Instagram, to to maybe read one of your books that I have here. I don't feel that I'm escaping from something. I feel like I'm looking forward to be on the mobile. I'm feeling happy that I'm doing it. So where is the discomfort thing in this? What you're describing it?
So once you're doing it, you might feel something. You definitely do. You feel the relief. You feel the release of the discomfort. But tell me how you felt the last time you got distracted. Tell me about a recent distraction. What did you do?
So for example, when I was preparing for this interview, I was tired, and so sometimes came into my mind that maybe I can check my numbers online and stuff.
Yeah. You just proved the point. So you were experiencing fatigue, maybe boredom, And to escape that fatigue and boredom, let me just go check my statistics. Let's go check the news. Let's go check Instagram. Let's go check TikTok. Let's go check YouTube. Let's go read a book. Let's go take a drink. Let's go have a smoke. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, though, what prompted you to do those things was that you felt uncomfortable. You didn't like the way you felt. Now, to some people, that sounds kind of sad. What do you mean? I like these things. That's why I do them. But that's a very childlike explanation. It's very surface level. It's superficial. The deeper and more interesting, and I think actually much more empowering realization is that it's not the thing that gets you. It's not your phone. It's not the drink. It's not the smoke. It's not the scroll. It's none of that stuff. It's fundamentally your need to escape an uncomfortable sensation. And once you realize that fact, the world just opens up in a whole new way. You have a superpower now to do things that you never realized you could do. Because if you ask most people what their dreams are, and you ask them, well, why haven't you accomplished your dreams? It's almost never they don't know what to do. We all know what to do, right? Like if you want to get in shape, you have to eat right, you have to exercise. If you want to build a business, you have to work real hard for a long time. If you want to have a great relationship, a good marriage, be a great parent, it takes hard work. And we all know what to do, right? And if you don't know what to do, the beauty of these devices, ask it, right? Ask Google, ask ChatGPT. All the answers are out there, all of them. There's no secrets anymore. The secret, the difference between people who achieve and people who don't is that the people who achieve are the ones who can sustain their behaviors long enough to do the hard stuff, right? Without getting distracted. So that's why I think becoming indistractable is the skill of the century, because in an age where we are flooded with information, right? We all know what to do. Information is not scarce. What is scarce is the ability to get out of our own way and do the thing we know we need to do.
Okay, so the big question is how to do it, how to become indistractable.
Well, you've got the book. Give me a summary. You just run it. I mean, this is exactly what I spent 5 years researching. That's it right there. And so, and you should know, by the way, I want everybody to know, I didn't write this book because I had the answer. I wrote this book because I was looking for the answer, because I was tired of professors who have tenure, they can't get fired, telling me I should stop checking email. Thanks, stupid. Like, that's not helpful.
Never heard it.
You're going to stop checking email. You get fired. What kind of stupid advice is this? Stop checking email. Stop checking social media. That's dumb.
It's like when you're angry and somebody tells you, calm down, right?
Calm down. Exactly. Has never worked ever on anyone. Calm down. Oh, you're distracted. You know what? You should check your phone less. Okay. It's so dumb. And so I was looking for a way that actually worked. And at first I got taken in by this bullshit that the device is the problem. Let's blame Facebook. Let's blame Instagram. Let's blame TikTok. It's all their fault. And it's very seductive. It's very sexy. And by the way, lots of things they do, they need to stop doing. I'm not saying that they're ethically correct on everything. There's a lot of things they could do better. But just blaming the devices without realizing who's using the device and why we're using the device and what we are escaping using the device, we don't actually solve the problem. And so that's why I wanted for myself to find a solution. It wasn't just, hey, I want to write a book. It was that I was the most distracted person on earth. I was looking for the answer.
Okay. So from your personal story, I heard that you mentioned like when you're overweight, then you have to do something about it. And that was your experience. So what was the moment when you found out that, okay, maybe it's because I don't have like enough focus, enough discipline. I have to start changing things. So how was it like for you, and what exactly did you change in your life?
When I was overweight?
Yes.
Yeah. So I used to be clinically obese, not just overweight, but actually clinically obese.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And for me, I think the main motivation was girls. So girls weren't paying attention to me. I didn't like that. My friends were getting lots of attention and I wasn't. And I wanted to do something about it. And what I learned in that journey, today I'm almost 48 years old and I'm in the best shape of my life. And it's not because I'm athletic. I don't like sports in particular. But what I discovered was that for the very same reasons we overuse technology, that when we are overweight, when we're obese, I wish I could tell you it was the food's fault. Right? I wish I could tell you it was the delicious food.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I wasn't eating because I was hungry. I was eating because I was lonely. I was eating because I was bored. I was eating because I was depressed at how much I had just eaten.
Yeah, I see.
And if you talk to anybody who's clinically obese, not, somebody who has 5 pounds extra or something, but like somebody who's actually obese, it doesn't just happen. It's not just our genes. There might be some kind of component to that. But really, chronic overeating is always for one reason, and that is we eat our feelings. And that's the same way when it comes to any type of escape. I was escaping through food. Some people escape through pornography. Some people escape through social media. Some people escape through cigarettes or drugs. It's always the same reason. It's that we haven't learned how to deal with discomfort. And it's a skill like any other. There's no class. I never took a class in school on how do I deal with these uncomfortable sensations. And so that's really, I think, the skill is century. That's the first step. Master the internal triggers, or they become your master. That's the first section of what really blew my mind, and I think makes my work very different from everyone else's out there. Everyone else says, "Oh, use this app, grayscale your phone, do this trick, do this tip," and that stuff, it lasts for a little while. But these are tactics. Tactics are what you do. Strategy is why you do it. So if you don't understand why a tactic works, you'll never really solve the problem. You have to understand the strategy behind it.
It reminded me of saying that all the problems that humans have is because man cannot sit alone in a room for like 30 minutes.
That's a big part of it. Now, I love that quote, by the way.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that sitting in a room alone for 30 minutes will solve your problems.
Yeah.
Don't get it wrong. So a lot of you, I know people who are addicted to meditation. Like literally, you can get addicted to an unhealthy degree.
Wow.
To meditating your problems away. It can be like a drug. So I think some people misinterpret that wonderful quote. It's not that sitting in a room for 30 minutes solves your problems. It's your inability to sit alone in a room for 30 minutes. That's the problem. It's that you don't have the tools to be at peace and to say, I don't want to be here and this doesn't feel good. And yet I'm going to be okay with it. Because that happens all day long. It's not just sitting in a room for 30 minutes. It's waiting in line for 30 minutes. It's your plane is delayed at the airport for 30 minutes. It's your child is having a rough time for 30 minutes. It's work is difficult for 30 minutes. It's exercise is difficult for 30 minutes. It's the consistent through line is your ability to reshape those uncomfortable experiences and move them into traction rather than constantly trying to escape them with another distraction.
Yeah. So maybe why is it for us so hard to do nothing? I think it's even harder and harder nowadays. How is that so?
Yeah. Well, I think it's part of why humans are so wonderful. What makes us such an amazing species is that we're busybodies. We love to constantly do stuff. And that stuff oftentimes includes, building businesses and discovering new medicine and creating new technologies and overthrowing despots. I mean, that's what we do as people. We make the world better and better and better. So overall, it's a very good trait. But, oftentimes our best traits are also our worst enemies. And so that same drive that has created the modern world oftentimes means we need something to do with our hands. We need something to do with our minds. And so we look for escape. That's why I think it's learning these techniques are very, very important, but they're tools like anything else.
Okay. So listening to what you're saying, that everything we do is an attempt to exit some discomfort we have in us. It sounds quite depressing for me. Like where can we find happiness in all of this when we are still escaping some discomfort and
What's worse for me is to not chase happiness. Happiness comes as a byproduct of a well-lived life. If you chase the thing, you never find it. It's like when I don't know if you're married or have a girlfriend or anything or just some kind of relationship, but I remember when I was looking for love, when you come up to girls and say, hey, I'm looking for love. Do you want to love me? You're a creep, right? It's super weird. But
Yeah.
you know how you find love? You become the kind of person who's lovable, right? You become the kind of person that people want to be around. That's how you become lovable. And I think it's the same with happiness. I don't think happiness should be pursued directly. Happiness is one of those things like money and love that it comes as a byproduct of
Yeah.
giving, of being a kind of person that people want to do business with, that people want to buy from, that people want to be friends with, that people want to love. That's how we get those things. And the way we become that kind of person, I believe, is by doing what we say we're going to do. To me, nothing makes me happier at the end of the day than a day well lived. So today, for example, I had on my schedule, I had a business meeting at 9 a.m., had a nice cup of coffee with a friend of mine who we do business together. Then I went to the gym. I checked my emails. I got through those. These were all things that were on my calendar that I said I was going to do. When I can do that in a day, and then I have this interview, then I'm going to have a meal with my family. Like when I do these things, when I say I will do them, not only am I showing to other people that I have integrity, right? If I say I'm going to be with my wife, if I say I'm going to be with my daughter, if I say I'm meeting with a business partner, if I say that I'm going to do what I'm going to do, I show that I have personal integrity to myself. And that makes me happy. I go to the gym because I said I would, right? I
Yeah.
work on that book because that's what I said I'm going to do. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not putzing around my time. I'm not wasting my life because that's what I said I was going to do. Now, by the way, when you become indistractable, you can include time for all those fun things. You want to go on social media? Awesome. I love social media. You want to play video games? You want to watch a movie? You want to, whatever it is you want to do is great. As long as you do it on your schedule and according to your values, not someone else's. So what makes me happy is living up to my values. And so that's actually step 2. Step 1 is master the internal triggers or they will become your master. Step 2 is making time for traction. And we do that by turning our values into time. So what are values? Values are attributes of the person you want to become. So part of becoming indistractable is to understand, who do you want to become? Well, how do you know that? You ask yourself, what are my values? What do I value in life? You know, you ask people, what do you value? What's important to you? Oh, health, very important. Got to be healthy. That's the most important thing. But then you look at their calendar. Do they have any time to go to the gym? Do they have any time to make sure they're eating nutritious food? Do they have a bedtime? Right? How many of us are doom scrolling when we know we should be sleeping? Right? You can say one thing, but you have to turn those values into time. Or family. Oh yeah, family's super important. Yeah. I gotta friends. Oh, friends, super important. But where's that time on the schedule? Right? When push comes to shove, do you have that time on your schedule? And are you the kind of person who lives with integrity, not only to others, but also to yourself? That's what makes me happy.
Okay, so that's interesting. So basically, what you're saying is that for if I would schedule my, let's say, week in advance for things that are important for me, let's say there will be like gym and meditation, study time, work, friends, and I don't know, fun stuff. And I will be doing these things, which will be like hard, and I don't know, I have to be disciplined like all the time. And during the time, it will not feel like I'm happy that now I have to wake up at like 6:30 a.m. and here at from 7 I have to start meditating, and then from 8 I'm starting reading, and then I'm going to work. In the meantime, it feels like I don't know, I have to like put a lot of discipline there. So where does the feeling of happiness comes in that?
Well, you said something that's very confusing. Why did you say have to?
Yeah, because it's in my like time box. It's in my calendar. So
Okay.
if I
But
if I have morning routine,
who made the time box?
yeah, I did. But for
A-
example, if I
And
if I
so
give my example, yeah,
wait. So
yeah,
if
sure,
you made the time box, why do you
yeah.
have to do any of those things?
So for example, when I was starting with my morning routine, and I was starting waking up at 5 a.m.
Uh-huh.
I in the first like 2 months, I never felt like happy. I'm happy that I am waking up. It was always like terrible for me at the moment. And
Yeah.
then I had from 5:30 scheduled reading, then meditation. It
Yeah.
felt like I have to do it, so I create a habit. That's what I
So
meant to.
so it's very simple. You don't do that anymore. You made the
Y-
schedule.
Yes.
And if it's not improving your life, Why are you doing it?
It was actually improving my life.
Oh,
But
okay.
from the first weeks, it didn't feel good because I had like lower sleep. I had to like set myself to it. I was creating a habit for
Mm,
that. Yeah.
mm,
So it was a must for me at the beginning.
mm. Well, I think, do you think that feeling good is the same as being happy?
No,
And so where did the expectation that waking up at 5:30 has to feel good?
it wasn't expectation, but
Hmm.
I was thinking if I have scheduled other things in my calendar and I'm going from task to task, where does the feeling of happiness come from? Yeah.
Yeah. You tell me, what does happiness feel like to you?
For example, when I'm with my girlfriend,
Mhm.
we're spending time. For example, when I accomplish something that is hard for me. So, for example, if I go back to morning routine, it was hard for me to like get up at 5 a.m. until 9, do something. But after that, I was feeling good. I was proud of myself that I did it. So during those 3 hours, it was hard and I was tired and stuff. But the rest of the day, I felt like proud and I felt happy maybe in the
Excellent.
morning after that. Yeah. So
That's it. So you figured it out. So the problem isn't what you did, that you got the result. The problem was your expectation that it should be any other way. That's the problem. The problem is our
mhm.
interpretation, our beliefs around how things should feel. Why should the thing that makes you happy necessarily feel good? It doesn't have to. Many things that make us happy don't feel good. I have a 17-year-old wonderful daughter. I wish I could tell you that raising a kid always is fun. It's not. There's a lot of things you have to do for a kid that suck. I've started
Yeah.
3 companies. A lot of stuff that sucks. I'm in the best shape of my life. Half stuff sucks. But I don't expect it not to suck. In fact, whenever I now feel that discomfort, I love it. I love it. I'm stuck in traffic. Yeah. I'm getting up early and I don't feel like it. Yeah. This writing is hard. Yeah. Because that's the point. That's where
Mhm.
the strength comes from. It's not in having the discipline to do it. I don't like that word discipline. I like the word mindset. I like beliefs because the idea is not, oh, I'm going to push through it even though it's awful. I'm going to suffer. That's not a trick. That's just punching yourself in the face all day. And it's very difficult to do. A much better thing to do is to change your mind around that behavior if you want to. If you say, look, getting up in the morning early, at the end of the day, I have a better day. I'm happier. I did what I want to do. I have fewer regrets. And I'm living my life according to the kind of person I want to become. And if you see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and you want to keep doing it, nobody says you have to do it. Do whatever you want. It's your life. But if you see that's making your life better, the only way through that is to change your perception of the pain. So, for example, when I'm writing, I've been a professional author now since 2014, so over a decade. Um, and every time I write, it's not a habit. You can't make a habit out of writing. That's against the definition of habit. Some things will always be difficult. But when I write, all I want to do is escape. I want to check the news. I want to look at sports scores. I want to look at stock prices. I want to look at YouTube. I want to do everything but the writing. But I feel good about myself. I feel happy when I do this hard work of writing. So one technique that I use that is very beneficial in the book Indistractable, there's a dozen different techniques you can use. This is one of them. One of them is a mantra. And my mantra goes like this. So when I'm having a difficult time, I have a tool ready to deal with those internal triggers. I don't escape it by scrolling or smoking or drinking. I escape that trigger with a simple mantra. I remind myself as a way to change my belief about that discomfort, to try and welcome the discomfort. I repeat this mantra. I take a deep breath. I close my eyes for a quick second and I say, this is what it feels like to get better. This is what it feels like to get better. And that quick reminder that if what I was doing was easy, if there was no discomfort, everybody would do it. It wouldn't be special. right? What makes me able to sell 1 million books when others can't is because I can sit down and do the hard stuff. That's the point, right? And
Yeah.
so by leaning into it, by saying, this is what it feels like to get better. This is the point. The discomfort is the point. It's not supposed to feel good, right? The feeling bad, the discomfort is your opportunity for growth. And so changing that mindset, changing that belief, that's what my next book is all about, Beyond Belief, is a really, really important skill.
Let's get into it. You mentioned you have sold over 1 million books, and there's coming out another one, a third one. So can you tell us a little bit more about it? What is it about?
Sure.
How can it benefit us? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll show it to you. I can't say too much about it because it's not out yet, but this is the new cover. I just got the
Brilliant.
advanced reader copies today, actually. Very exciting. And
Yeah.
the book is about how our beliefs shape our perception of reality. So how beliefs change what you see, what you feel, and what you do. And it's going to be available in over 30 languages, and it's coming out March 10th in the United States and the UK. And I'm very excited to. I can't talk too much about it right now. My publisher has kind of embargoed what I'm allowed to
Yeah.
say, but I'm very excited. And the reason I wrote the book is that I think there is a gap between what people know they should do and actually doing it. And so this was the struggle I had with Indistractable. With Indistractable, so many people, oh my God, I'm so distracted today and I have ADHD. And by the way, I also have been diagnosed with ADHD. This is what the news and have you seen what's happening in politics? And no, I can't do my work. It's too difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm so distracted. And I would give people the recipe. Here, I spent 5 years writing this book. Here's the answer. Do it. And many times people didn't do it. and
Yeah,
and I'm
sure.
guilty of that too, right? I also have books and recommendations and gurus and advice that I haven't taken. And I try to ask myself, why? Why is that? That despite knowing what to do and wanting the benefits, why don't we do it? And I think the missing piece is belief. That if you don't believe you will get the results, or you don't believe in yourself and your ability to do the behavior, you're not going to do it. And so that's why beliefs are so important. They affect literally what we see, how we perceive reality, what we feel, our thoughts about the future, and what we do in the present moment.
Yeah, wow. That reminded me of a quote from Albert Einstein you have mentioned on your LinkedIn about when you're talking about beliefs. Here's a quote about miracles. When we are believe in miracles, they might happen, but if we not, they will never happen. Maybe can you talk us more about the belief system and what happens maybe with our lives when we start believing in miracles?
Yeah, that I think what we find is that when you look at why people don't accomplish their goals, why don't they have the life they want? Why, despite knowing what to do, we don't do the behavior for whatever goal it might be. I want to start a business. I want to raise a family. I want to excel in my career, whatever the case might be. The number one reason is we quit. Very simple. We quit. It's not the only reason. And by the way, sometimes quitting is the right answer. I've quit many things, right? I've had books that I started that I didn't finish. I've had relationships that I quit. I've had all kinds of things that I've quit. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with quitting. It's quitting too soon. That's the problem. It's quitting when, if you had persevered, you would have succeeded. That's a tragedy. That's a shame. And we all have those things in our life that we know, I've had that many times in past experiences where I started a business, I gave up, I quit, and then somebody else succeeds in that same business. It's terrible. It's the worst.
Yeah.
If I had just kept going, I would have succeeded as well. And so I was looking for the antidote for how do we persevere? How do we keep going even when things are tough? And it really does come down to changing our belief system.
Okay, so is it something learnable? Because I can imagine that a lot of our belief system comes from our childhood, and basically we believe we have a lot of limiting beliefs. So yeah, we often don't even know what we don't know. So how can we learn it? Is it possible?
Yeah, so it starts with identifying what are our limiting beliefs. That's exactly right. So we have our limiting beliefs and we have our liberating beliefs. And so we're developing a quiz here. I'll have a quiz up on my website, nirandfar.com, very, very soon to help people identify these limiting beliefs that are holding
Okay.
them back. And once you can identify them, now you can start seeing them in your daily life. And then once you can see them, you can do something about them.
Only 10% of the triggers that we have that gets our attention are external, as we have mentioned, social media and stuff, and 90% of them is our internal triggers. So it was a bit shocking for me. So
Hmm.
what is in this 90% of internal triggers?
So the internal triggers are all the things we talked about earlier: boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, anxiety. These are all
Mhm.
uncomfortable sensations that we seek to escape. So that's 90% of the time that we check our phone. It's not because of a ping, ding, or ring. It's not because of a notification. 90% of the time that we check our device, it's because of an uncomfortable emotional state.
Okay, so and then we get those internal triggers to those external, like maybe I can check my mail, I can check my social media. So do you have some tool or some like recommendation? What can I do when I get distracted a lot with my internal triggers, of course? So what can I do with that so I can be more productive?
Yeah, so the first step is recognizing those internal triggers. So the biggest hurdle, I think that the biggest discovery for me in writing Indistractable was the surprise about how often we check our phones because we feel bad. That we like to blame, it was the notification, it was the ring, it was the whatever. That's only 10% of the time. So the first step has to be recognizing, why do you keep checking your phone? Like if you go to dinner with your family and you can't help checking your phone when you're not at work, you don't need to check your phone all the time. It's just because you're bored. It's just because you're lonely. It's just because you don't like that feeling. And so that's the
Yeah.
first step, is to recognize that that is the source of 90% of our distractions. So what do? We need to have tools ready to go. We need to have, all kinds of different tactics that we can use to deal with that discomfort. So one, for example, is this mantra I shared with you. There's over a dozen different ones in the book. Another one I use almost every single day is the 10-minute rule. The 10-minute rule says that you can give in to that distraction. You can scroll your phone, you can smoke the cigarette, you can, whatever it is that you're trying to not do, you can do it, right? You're an adult, you can do whatever you want, but not right now. You will do it in 10 minutes. And so what this allows you to do is, over time, you're proving to yourself, oh, wait a minute, I can delay, I can wait. It's not the end of the world. Nothing's going to happen. If 2 minutes or 10 minutes are too long, you can make it shorter. You can make the 5-minute rule. You can make it the 3-minute rule. It doesn't matter. But pretty much
Mhm.
almost anyone can delay a distraction for just 10 minutes. And so over time, what you're going to find is that the 10-minute rule becomes the 15-minute rule, becomes the 20-minute rule. And now you're not addicted to your device. You're not beholden to these things. You're not powerless. It's about building your personal agency to be able to wait a little while until the appropriate time, until the time box comes when you said you were going to do what you said you're going to do. So there's a dozen different techniques in the book, but that's some of the ones that I use every single day.
Okay. So, and I can imagine that this 10-minute window you have in your calendar, is it correct?
Well, not necessarily.
Or
So that the 10-minute rule, surfing the urge, is not something you
yeah.
schedule for. It's when, let's
Okay.
say I budgeted an hour for writing, right? But during the writing, it's kind of tough. Can't I just check the news or YouTube or Instagram? So I'm not going to do those things because that would be a distraction. Instead, what I do is I set an alarm for 10 minutes, and
Hmm.
now I have a choice to make. I can either go back to the task at hand, right? I can either do what I said I was going to do. Oops, I set a timer by accident there. I can either go back to the task at hand, do the thing I said I was going to do, the writing, or I can surf the urge for 10 minutes. And so this is an advanced technique I talk about. Surfing the urge acknowledges that these uncomfortable sensations are like waves. They crest and then they subside. But in the moment, that's not what it feels like, right? When
Yeah.
we feel bored, when we feel lonely, when we feel uncertain, when we feel lost, when we feel stressed, we think we're always going to feel that way. But that's not the truth, right? That these sensations are always transitory, they're temporary. And so your job is to surf the urge like a surfer on a surfboard. So you can use a mantra, for example, in that particular moment. You can just observe that sensation, be mindful of what it is that you're feeling for a second, and acknowledge, wait a minute, it's okay. It's all right that this is hard. That's part of the process. That's something to relish, not to escape from. And what you find is by the end of those 10 minutes, 9 times out of 10, you're back at the thing you said you were going to do. So I almost never make it to the 10 minutes. After like minute 3, 4, 5, I'm back to writing, right? Because I tell myself, well, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to check Instagram for 10 minutes, but by 3 or 4 minutes, I'm back to writing, right? Because that feeling doesn't last very long.
That's very helpful. Okay. So I'm wondering, is there something that top performers, high achievers do differently, maybe feel differently than most of the people?
Yeah. So what we find is that high performers, they feel the same. They also feel lonely and bored and indecisive and stressed and uncertain. They feel the exact same things. High performers, and we see this across different fields, the arts, sports, business. What's special about them is that they take those same uncomfortable feelings and they use it as rocket fuel to propel them towards traction rather than trying to escape it with distraction. So what normal people do is when we feel, I'm bored, I'm lonely, I'm uncertain, I'm stressed, I have to smoke, I have to drink, I have to scroll, I have to do something to take my mind off the feeling. High performers, they use that very same sensation and it pushes them to do more, right? How many famous people who do amazing things come from difficult backgrounds, right? Come from trauma, come from family histories that are awful, but they use that pain, that discomfort to push them to do more. I'm going to show people, I'm going to show the world what I can do. The
Mhm.
same exact type of trauma. Some people say, oh, you know what? I can't do it. I have trauma. I'm incapable. Right. So it's really about
Yeah.
how we it's called post-traumatic growth or post-traumatic stress. And so you can go
Yeah.
one of two ways based on how we see what happened to us. And luckily, it's not easy, but it can be a choice.
Yeah. We are back to the belief system we have mentioned earlier, right?
Hmm.
How it determines everything. It's crazy. I think that it's in the book Mindset from Carol Dweck, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, how that's basically what we are talking about. That how we perceive, like
It's part of
maybe
it. Yeah.
stress.
Yeah.
Maybe it's. I think there's also correlation, maybe also with aging, regarding what I read in like telomere effect, I guess. Like how we interpret like everything, even like emotions. It really determines our lives, right?
It can, yeah. So a mindset is a set of beliefs. It's the beliefs that determine everything you see about the world. A belief is just a subset of that. A belief about
Yeah.
aging, a belief about your cognitive capabilities, a belief about distraction, a belief about other people. So what I do is to look at these singular beliefs. Right. So one of the most interesting things is around our beliefs around certain people that we actually don't see people as they are. We see them as we think we are, right? Are the
Yeah.
relationship to us. It's amazing. When I first met my wife, I thought she was very beautiful. Now I think she's gorgeous, right? I literally see her differently because we've been married for 25 years. We've raised a child together. We've started businesses together. Like she's more beautiful than ever to me because of how I
Yeah.
see her. And it's amazing. Like, you know, you behave differently around different people because of that belief set as well. So it's almost like a reoccurring loop, right? You see people as differently, so you behave differently, and they behave differently because of how they see you behave differently. And so these
Yeah.
beliefs are could be something that's manifested both internally and in our outside relationships.
Perfect. So let's talk about habits for a while. I was wondering, how do we even like create a new habits? Is there some like loop that goes around even for the good ones, for the bad ones?
There's a lot of stuff on how to create habits. It's kind of boring. I think at this point, I
Yeah.
think we've reached peak habit. But I'll tell you, I think what most people don't know about habits, which is that not everything can become a habit. I think a lot of people try and make things into habits that can't become habits. So this is important to know. There's read somebody else's books on how to create a habit, but this is what you should know.
Yeah.
That a habit has a very specific definition. What is the definition of a habit? What is a habit? A habit is an impulse to do a behavior with little or no conscious thought. Okay. A habit is an impulse to do behavior with little or no conscious thought. That means that some behaviors will never be habits. Meditation, it's not a habit. Why? How do you meditate with little or no conscious thought? If you are meditating with little or no conscious thought, you're asleep, right? When you're
Yeah.
meditating, you have to bring conscious thought to your practice. If not, you're
Okay.
asleep. Writing. I've been a professional writer now for over a decade. How exactly do you write out of habit? How do you write with no conscious thought? Impossible. You have to think,
Yeah.
right? You can't write without thinking. Writing is not a habit. It never will be a habit. You can't do it without conscious thought. Those things are routines. What is a routine? A routine is a series of behaviors frequently repeated. So with a routine, it can involve conscious thought. And so why is this important? Ah, big deal. Tomato, big difference. Okay, who cares? This is very, very important. Here's why. Because when someone starts to try and form a habit and it doesn't become effortless, it doesn't become something on autopilot, they think that they're broken, right? Like I think you might have mentioned, maybe I misheard. You said, I started getting up at 5:30 and I was trying to make it into a habit and it was really hard and I didn't like it. That's very
Yeah.
common because waking up at 5:30 is not going to become a habit. It's not something you do with little or no conscious thought. It might be something that if you get enough sleep, right, after a while, it may not be as difficult eventually, but it's always going to require some degree of effort, right? It's always, if it's going to become something that requires some work. So you shouldn't expect it to be easy. Right. Whereas a habit needs to be something that eventually becomes something you do with little or no conscious thought. So, for example, if you're driving, learning to drive, when you first learn to drive, oh my God, so difficult. You have to think about everything. But then if you've been driving for 5 years or so, it's not so hard. You don't have to think about it. You can have a conversation. You can listen to the radio. You can do all kinds of stuff as you're driving because you're not really thinking about it anymore. I mean, a little bit, but you're not fully consciously thinking about driving like you did when you first learned. For those routines, we need a different set of behaviors. We need what's called deliberate practice. And so deliberate practice is about getting in the reps. It's about doing that behavior, whether it's easy or not. And so for a routine, meditating, writing, exercise is another one, an exercise habit. Some exercise can be a habit, like taking a walk, probably you could do without thinking. But if you're going to the
Yeah.
gym and you're trying to lift more weight, you're trying to run faster, you're trying to beat a PR, that's not going to be a habit. It's going to be hard work. So you want to focus on building a routine. And so routine, the right mindset, is not to try and escape the discomfort. It's about learning to deal with the discomfort in a productive way.
You said the definition of a habit. Uh, where is the line of addiction?
Yeah.
What's the like different definition? What's the difference?
Sure. Yeah. Good question. So an addiction, so as a reminder, a habit is an impulse to do a behavior with little or no conscious thought. We have good habits. We have bad habits.
Yeah.
An addiction is always bad. The definition of addiction is a persistent compulsive dependency on a behavior or substance that harms the user. So there's no such thing as a good addiction, right? When someone says, oh, I'm addicted to running or I'm addicted to, no, there's no such thing as a good addiction. Addictions are always bad. We don't want an addiction. Addiction also is a medical term. It's a pathology. So it's not something that everybody gets addicted. People say, oh, our phones are addictive. They can addict some people, right? Just like food can be addictive to some people. Is all food addictive? No. So
Yeah.
addiction is never as simple as just the product. Right?
Mhm.
Nobody steps on a heroin needle and becomes addicted. That's not how heroin works. That's not how addiction works. Meanwhile, millions of women, fentanyl. Fentanyl is such a terrible drug plague, at least in America. It's,
Mhm.
so many people have died from fentanyl. When a woman goes in to deliver a baby and she receives a C-section, guess what she also receives? Fentanyl. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
just because you ingest a certain substance or a certain behavior doesn't mean you get addicted. Just like our phones, we love to say, "Oh, our phones are so addictive," but it's not as simple as saying it's just the device. For the vast majority of people, it's not an addiction; it's a bad habit,
Mm.
right? And so, it's very important we differentiate between these terms and we get them correct, because the worst thing about this terminology is that an addiction sounds like, the word addiction, the origin is addictio from the Latin, meaning slave.
Yeah.
And so when we believe, back to these beliefs, when we believe that we are enslaved, we are addicted to these devices, it tells us there's nothing we can do. And when you tell people there's nothing they can do, guess what? They believe you. And so what do people do when they believe there's nothing to be done? Nothing. It's not my fault my kids won't get off their phones. It's not my fault I can't stop
Mm.
checking. I'm addicted. They're addicted. Everyone's addicted, right? It's become this
Yeah.
medical term that absolves us from saying, wait a minute, what can we do here? It's not that hard, right? It's
Yeah.
really not that hard. If we
Mm.
do something about it, if you sit there and do nothing about it, yeah, you're going to struggle forever. You're going to be part of these mindless, manipulatable masses of people who the media companies will keep you hooked forever. However, if you read Indistractable, if you know these techniques and you teach them to your children, anyone can become indistractable.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned that there might be some people who are addicted to meditating, for example. And now we are talking about that there's a line that when the habit is starting to become harmful for us, it's addiction. So how can I find out, for example, if I go back to the meditating stuff, it feels good. It might feel good even when I will be meditating like a monk for 12 hours a day. Do you think I would recognize that it's becoming harmful when it might be addictive?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, and it's really up to the user. I mean, when you see people who go to a monastery and all they do is meditate and pray, and they're not taking part in society, is that an addiction? It's hard to know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
That's why it has to meet this definition. It probably doesn't, because the definition again, addiction is a persistent, compulsive dependency. So for those type of behaviors, if you like to meditate, for most people, if you meditate and you like it benefits you, it's adding to your life. That's fantastic. It's wonderful. It's a great practice. If every time you feel a bit of stress, you're escaping into, oh, I have to meditate my problems away without actually dealing with them, it can become a problem as well. And many people do. I mean, we see people who take otherwise very healthy behaviors, exercise. I mean, go to the next race in your city, go to the next marathon, the half marathon, and look at the front line of people there. You will see people who are addicted to exercise. You'll see that it'll be very clear to everyone. You know what they look like. They're very thin. They typically have all kinds of other psychological problems that they're struggling with, and they're
Mm.
escaping those problems not by pursuing exercise, but from running away from whatever they're struggling with. That's how they're coping. Because in addiction, people think addiction is about getting high. Not for addicts. That's for recreational users, right? Recreational
Mm.
users like to feel good. Addicted people aren't feeling good. They're escaping feeling bad.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, for example, here in Czech Republic, we are the biggest beer drinkers per person in the world,
Mm.
which means a lot of people are addicted to alcohol. And so I was wondering if we can give some tools or some tips if I'm alcoholic,
Mm.
or let's say I have to drink. My habit is to drink 4 beers per evening.
Yeah.
So it's like on the line if I'm addicted or it's just like fun and get away from me. So what is the first step I can do to turn that negative loop into the positive one?
I think the first step with any overconsumption or an addiction is recognizing the problem. So if it is keeping you from the life you want, is if it is the money you're spending on the addiction, if it's the time you're spending on the addiction is taking you away from things you want in your life, that's
Yeah.
when we have to recognize it's a problem. But by the way, one of the most effective addiction treatment is time. Turns out
Yeah.
that's the most effective treatment. Why? Because over time, people's priorities change, right? When they're going through a difficult time in their life, they're much more likely to seek escape, whether it's through alcohol, whether it's through drugs, whether it's through social media, whether it's through television, whatever the case might be. They're seeking escape when we have difficult times in our life. So when people have different responsibilities, whether they have kids, whether they need a job, whether they have something, most people over time, if they can survive their addiction, that's the danger, is that they cause permanent harm through the addiction. Most people age out when addiction is a confluence of the person, the problem, their ability to deal with their problems, and the product. It's all three at once.
Yeah.
So if one of
Mm.
those legs of the stool you don't have anymore, either the person learns to deal with those situations, or they don't have that product anymore, then the addiction disappears. So that can oftentimes be a function of where they are.
Mhm.
So how they deal with they're a product of their environment. Many times when people change towns, they go to college, they come back from college and they start the working world, their habits and sometimes their addictions change as well. So the most important thing is to learn what is why is this causing you harm? What are you trying to escape? And then dealing with those problems in a healthier way, learning to deal with those feelings in a healthy way versus trying to escape them with some kind of substance.
Is there something you think that differentiates people who get through addiction to live better lives from those who are still trying and they still get pushed back?
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, from what the data shows us, it's a support network.
Wow.
And that's the most important thing, is that when people are lonely, when people are isolated, they turn to substances to escape. I mean, look, if I was homeless, I would be on drugs. If I had nobody
Mm.
in the world to help me and I'm on the street and I'm trying to get through the night, I'd probably do drugs too.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's a product of the situation. And so not that necessarily we need to excuse it. I'm actually for, I used to be very liberal on drug policies. Now I've become much more conservative on drug policies. I think we've in many places gone too far with liberalizing
Yeah.
drugs, because I think a lot of people, can't handle it with some addictive behaviors, let's say with social media or, you know, uh, whatever the case might be. What are you giving up? You're giving up your time, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
watching television, reading a book, looking at football, what do you lose? You lose time. With drugs, you're giving up your health, right? You're giving up this. These can cause permanent damage. And I think we became, it almost became sexy recently with acid and mushrooms, and now we're starting to see, people who experiment with this stuff. Some people benefit. A lot of people suffer. I would say the majority, even with the psychedelics, that people say, okay, it helps you in so many different ways. I think it just because it can help some people benefit from this stuff, a lot of people do not. So I think we need, the pendulum is swinging the other way. Same with marijuana. I think with cannabis, it swung too far the other way. We see now that cannabis use disorder is becoming a serious problem, at least in the United States. People who are becoming addicted. We used to think cannabis wasn't addictive. This is not true. It is not true. You can become addicted. Just, it might not be chemically addicted, but you can become functionally addicted, socially addicted to
Mm.
cannabis as well. Because just like anything else, anything that decreases pain, anything that decreases pain, any analgesic can become addictive. Which is why you see
Mm.
people abusing all kinds of weird stuff, people sniffing glue, people eating paint, people doing all kinds of stuff. Anything that takes care of pain can essentially teach the brain to always go back to that thing to escape discomfort. And so
Yeah.
uh, I think we need to be very, very careful about making it too accessible, too easy, without having support systems in place. And so that's the defining trait of who recovers and who doesn't, is when somebody has a support system, a family, a community that needs them and that they need. That's when we find people recovering, oftentimes on their own.
Interesting. I think it might sound, let's say somebody hears that and he or she thinks that I don't have support in my family, with my friends, and stuff. What can I do to create like supportive, I don't know, like friendships? How can I do something about it? Because now when I'm hearing it, it might sound a bit like depressing for me that okay, I don't have any support and so maybe I cannot do anything about it. So is there something to do about it?
Well, I'm not here to give therapy or
Mhm.
counseling advice for addicts. I'm not qualified to do that. I do think, though, as a society, we need to be concerned when people aren't doing the type of things that traditionally make them a valuable, important part of their community. Right? If we have people who are falling outside of that, that there's the best thing that we can do to be part of a community is to form a family, is to take part in improving our community, serve on local community events, know your neighbors, things that people was part of, attend or some kind of religious institution. It turns out, whether you
Yeah.
believe in something supernatural or not doesn't matter. What matters is that you are part of a religious community. This is basic stuff that unfortunately we're losing. The world is becoming more secular. I'm secular, but we gave something up when we became secular. We need those communities. We need those institutions where when people suffer, we help them, and vice versa. They help us back.
Yeah, it's interesting because my first thought would be that the difference would be willpower. That those people who
Mm,
were addicted and they made it through is because they maybe found a way through their discipline, through their willpower. So, regarding the willpower, is it? There was a rumor that there's like limited uh like space of willpower that we have for each day. I heard that current studies deny that. So how is it with willpower? Is it trainable?
yeah.
Is there some like limited space about it?
Yeah, willpower is a tricky one because it's very squishy. It's hard to define what is it exactly.
Yeah.
And there used to be this idea that willpower decreases, that you kind of use it like a battery on your phone, that eventually it's used up, that you run out of it. And
Mhm.
this was called ego depletion. And it turns out it doesn't look like it's real. We used to think that was the case, and then further studies increasingly find it's very hard to replicate, except with one group of people. There is one group of people who really do run out of willpower, and those are people who believe that
Yeah.
willpower is a depletable resource. So
We're
only if
back there again.
it believes again, exactly. So this is again why beliefs are so important.
Mm.
That if you believe, up, I've made too many hard decisions, I'm done. I can't do this anymore because I'm spent, then you will act accordingly. Whereas if you believe, no, willpower is just like an emotion; it comes and goes, and it doesn't need to be something that I have to have all the time to do what I want to do. Then you're much more likely to sustain your behavior. So we shouldn't. I think we shouldn't depend on willpower because it comes too close to thinking, well, if I don't feel like it, that means I have low willpower, because a lot of things you don't feel like doing. I think it's a much better thing to not require that feeling, not require like the belief that, oh, only when I feel motivated will I do something. I think that's a very harmful myth. Who told you that? Who told you that you have to feel like something to do it? Nobody said that. That in fact we can
Yeah.
we can we can change our minds about that. We can change our belief and say, you know what? When I don't feel like it, I will do it. Why not?
Yeah.
Maybe try that on for size. Maybe that belief will serve you better.
Mm. Wow, interesting. Uh, there comes a new year in a while. A lot of people will be setting up their new goals for upcoming years that they uh, didn't do the previous years, and so on. Before we get into some tools or how to work with that, tell me more about. I have seen on your LinkedIn, cosmic insignificance therapy. I think it might be nice, like overview of our lives before we start talking about setting up goals for next year. You mentioned that this idea changed your life. So can you tell us more about it?
Hmm. Yeah, the idea is putting things in perspective. Cosmic
Yeah.
insignificance. So for me, I when I have a struggle in my life, when something is difficult, um, for me it helps to realize what my place is, like really what my place is. That at the end of the day, what I'm going through, as difficult as it might be, uh, it's a choice to suffer. Right? The pain is real. The pain is always real. Pain is real. Suffering, however, is optional, as the Buddhist saying goes. And so understanding that big picture, the miracle of our existence, the chance that the tiny infinitesimal chance that we are even having this conversation on this planet,
Yeah.
in the vastness of space, in this snap of a second where life on the planet exists, because it didn't for millions of years and billions of years, and it won't long after we're gone, is mind-blowing. Like, every day, almost once a day, I have this thought about how lucky I am to even have the consciousness to be able to suffer, right? To be able to experience pain. Like, like, do you ever think about that? Like, how crazy the odds are that we even exist? Like, that the moon has to be the exact right place from the sun and the planet, and we have to have water on this planet because none of the other planets have water, and that the one sperm that made you happened to be at the right place in the right time for you to exist. It's just mind blowing. Like, it's the one in a trillion, trillion, trillions that you even exist. And so, to me, in fact, I think a bit of motivation, because it helps me change that cognitive lens, that belief that we've been talking about, that that to remind me that what I'm facing is not hard. It's a challenge. It's an opportunity. That all suffering is an opportunity for growth.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's very nice. Sometimes I think about it as well, and it makes me feel a little bit insignificant, of course. But then every problem looks small, and all I'm thinking about is how can I get most of my life?
Yeah.
I get another 50 years. Nobody will remember me in 100 years.
No,
Not even like
nobody's gonna
500.
not just
Anything.
you.
Nothing matters, right?
They're not gonna remember in 1,000 years. They're not gonna remember Einstein and Newton, and in 5,000 years, I mean, like, everybody's gonna become irrelevant. And so, like, I think what's helpful about this concept is that most of our problems are so stupid, right? Like, most of our
Yeah.
disagreements are, she forgot to take out the trash and he left the toilet seat up. And how come she said that in that tone that I didn't like and hurt my feelings? And that person at work, why don't they recognize me? And so many of our problems, we get wound up over stupid stuff. Or hear this: I'm going to kill somebody because they believe a different religion. My God is different from their God, or they think that what I mean. It's crazy. It's madness that we would spend our time on Earth worrying about such stupid stuff.
Yeah, of course. It's very, very great thought. It's good to remind it, even for myself. So now when I'm listening to this and I'm thinking that I will be planning my next year resolutions, and I want to have the best year of my life, how should I approach it? Is it okay to just write down, let's say, 5 goals that I have for the next year? What is your recommendation for this one?
I would recommend not doing a big plan.
Yeah.
I would recommend starting with something that you can handle, because most people, when it comes to, I'm going to imagine my 5 years, my big plan, my life goals, it becomes overwhelming. It becomes very difficult. If you have a great plan, wonderful, good for you. I think that's fantastic. But if you're finding that difficult, I'm speaking to the kind of person like me who used to set these big goals, and then after 2 weeks, I'd give them up.
Yeah.
Why? I would write down, oh, today's going to be the year, lose 20 pounds. My New Year's resolution, lose 20 pounds.
Hmm.
And it didn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because that's what you want to have done. It doesn't involve what you do. And so the
Yeah.
right way to do this comes with visualization, by the way, with manifesting. There's a right way and a wrong way to manifest. You just expect the universe to give you things because you visualized them and you've sent positive energy into the universe is bullshit. The universe doesn't care. It's not going to give you things just because you're sending out good vibes. That's not how it works, folks. And in fact, we know there was a fabulous study done by Odejen et al., where she found that when she hooked people up to blood pressure monitors and she asked them to manifest, to visualize about all the things they want in the future, they became less likely to do what they had to do to get those things, and they never got those things. Why? Because when we visualize the wrong way, which is, here's what I want. Oh, I'm visualizing myself on a beach with 6-pack abs, and I'm going to be so rich, and I'm going to find the love of my life. And here I am visualizing this stuff. You know what happens? your blood pressure drops and you become less likely to do those things because you're so relaxed. So the right way to do it is to harness positive anxiety, that positive a fire in the belly that makes us do those things. So the right way to visualize your goals is not what you want, but rather to visualize what will get in the way of what you want. So if you want to get in shape, you don't visualize, oh my God, I'm going to look so good on the beach. What you do is you visualize next time I'm at a party and someone offers me a chocolate cake, what am I going to say? That's what you visualize. What you will do when something gets in the way of your goal. So that's one thing for the new year. The second thing I would recommend is just plan the week ahead. That's it. Based on your values. Remember, step number 2, make time for traction. You do that by turning your values into time. So what are values? Values are attributes of the person you want to become. So you ask yourself, how would the person I want to become spend their time next week? How much time would I spend with my family? How much time would I spend reading a book? How much time would I spend in the gym? How much time would I spend at work? How much time would I spend doing all the things I want to do, watching videos on YouTube, all the things you want to do? Invariably, here's what's going to happen. You're not going to have enough time. I promise you, you're not going to have enough time. And now, for the first time, you will have to make some trade-offs. You're going to have to say, one of my values is to be a valued employee, but another one of my values is to be an available father. So how am I going to give a little bit less time here and a bit more time there? And you're going to have to make those trade-offs. And now, during this process, so instead of making your New Year's resolution, make next week's calendar. Make your calendar for the next week. And most importantly, include some time in that calendar to do it again for the week ahead. I do it every week, Sunday at 8 p.m. I have time in my calendar where I make a time box calendar for the week ahead. Because remember, you can't say you got distracted unless you know what you got distracted from. I'll say it again. You can't say you got distracted unless you know what you got distracted from. So if you can't show me your calendar and tell me what it is you plan to do, you can't say you got distracted, because everything's a distraction unless you know what you said you were going to do. So now you've got this template. And then the next week, what I want you to do is to look at that template and say, how can I make it easier to follow? If I fucking hate getting up at 5:30 in the morning, maybe I don't have to do that. And that's fine. If it doesn't work for you, you can change it. You can't change it in the day. If you said you were going to do it, that's what you have to do. But you can change it the next day or the next week. That's fine. It's no problem, because you're constantly adapting. The right mindset is not, I'm going to be a drill sergeant. I'm going to do exactly what I said I'm going to do every day forever and ever. No, the right attitude is to be a scientist. What does a scientist do? What's their job? A scientist makes a hypothesis. They run an experiment. And then they look at the results in order to inform the next hypothesis and experiment. So every week you're going to look at your calendar and say, okay, what worked? What didn't work? How can I use this calendar to make me happy over time, right? How can I make it so that I live out my values and become the kind of person I want to be? So maybe, you know what, bedtime or waking up at 5:30, that's not going to work. Let me try something else. Maybe I'll move this here, there. And you're going to make those choices so that you have a calendar that reflects your values. That's how you accomplish your goals. That's how you become indistractable.
Wow. Very nice. So is there something that you want to change in your life for the upcoming year? What are your plans for the next year?
Well, so I've got a big book launch. That's a big goal. I want to make sure
Mhm.
that I can get the word out about Beyond Belief, because I think it can really improve millions of lives if I can get people to sit down and give it a read. But most importantly for me, it's to sustain, because I've never been in a place in my life where I have so much peace. I'm not content. I'm not done, but I have peace. I feel like I'm really on the right track in terms of where I want to be spending my time, my relationships. I've never been better with my wife, with my daughter, with my friends, with my family, my extended family. And my health has never been better. My business has never been better. And there's no secrets. It's just doing what I said I was going to do. So all I can ask for is to have as much time on earth as I can to keep doing what I'm doing.
Wow, that's very nice to hear. That it's inspirational. I will ask you near last questions that we ask all the guests we have on the show. The first one is, what's the most important lesson you have ever learned in your life?
The most important lesson I have ever learned in my life is that life is short. Make the most of it.
Yeah. What kind of person do you recognize wise?
There's a Hebrew idiom that goes, Eo chacham shelomed mikol adam, which says that the wise one is the one who learns from everyone.
Wow. Never heard that one.
Mhm.
Fantastic. Yeah. So if you would have ability to add one school subject for kids, what school subject would you use?
Without a doubt, how to become indistractable, especially now with
What?
how difficult it is for kids to focus despite all the devices. How to become indistractable, master internal triggers, make time for traction, hack back external triggers, prevent distraction with packs. If we teach our kids these 4 fundamental strategies, they can all become indistractable.
Yeah, perfect. Can you give us some book recommendations? Whatever comes to your mind.
Book recommendations. Okay, let's see. I really liked Rory Sutherland wrote a book. I love all his stuff, but he wrote a book that now the title is escaping me. Shoot, ah, I forgot.
We,
But
we,
his
can, we can
Alchemy,
edit.
Alchemy. I got it. Sorry, I
Okay.
just need a second.
Yeah.
That's a great book. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. And of course, your books, Hooked,
Thanks.
Indistractable. Yeah, I can recommend that.
Thank you.
So you don't have to be shy to recommend your own books.
I appreciate it. I'll
Yeah.
let you do that. Thank you.
Okay. Before I ask you the last question, if people could take away one thought, just one thought from this interview or from yourself,
Mm,
what would you say again to them to remember?
Sure. That the antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. That all of these problems that we're discussing, distraction and procrastination and these difficulties, it's just an impulse control problem. That it's this inability to resist the immediate temptations, the impulses to do the wrong thing, to taste, to eat the wrong thing, to smoke the wrong thing, to say the wrong thing to our spouse, something that we later regret. These are just impulses, just impulses. So many of our problems come from our inability to deal with our impulses, that we know what to do, but sometimes we just don't. And so the antidote to these impulses is forethought, is thinking ahead, that if you wait till the last minute, you will lose. You're a sucker, right? If you wait till the cigarette's in your hand, you're going to smoke it. If you wait till the chocolate cake is on the fork, you're going to eat it. If you sleep next to your cell phone every night by your bed, it's going to be the first thing you look at before you even say hello to your loved one. Because if you wait till the last minute, you will lose. However, if you plan ahead, if you take steps today, there's no distraction you can't overcome tomorrow.
Okay, so the last question is, how do you want to be remembered?
So I will tell you my personal purpose. So I repeat my personal purpose every day just to remind myself why I'm on earth. What am I doing here? And my purpose is to explain the world so that it can be made better. That's that's my mission. That's what I want to do, is explain the world so that they can be made better, starting with my struggles, right? So Indistractable came out of my struggles. Beyond Belief came out of my struggles. Hook came out of my struggles. And so my goal is to always be guided by my curiosity to solve what I'm struggling with, so that so that other people can learn from it as well. So the worlds can be made better.
Wow, that's beautiful.
What's yours? Do you have one?
Uh, yeah, it was always about making inspiration for the other ones. So that
Mm,
was actually the reason to start with this podcast.
love it.
There are quite a lot of them in the world, but here in our country, in Czech Republic, not so many, and that's why we're starting also doing it worldwide with those dubbing and translation to bring the best ideas from the world as what we discussed today to those people who really need them and cannot get to them. So it's about making inspiration for the people wants to live the better lives. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to visit. My grandparents on one side of my family were Czech, and I've never
Really?
visited. Yes, yes, and I would love to visit someday. It's top of my
Yeah,
list. So when we come, I'd love to meet you in person.
yeah, yeah, me too. When you will be planning it, let me know. Can give you like everything you need here. This will be
Thank you. I can't
perfect.
wait.
Yeah, okay. It was my pleasure, Nir. Thank you so much.
Likewise.
It
Thank you
was
so much.
inspirational. Just like your work that you are doing is very inspirational for me. And yeah, I really loved to talk with you. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, hopefully I talk to you someday in the future as well. So thank you
Sounds
once again.
great. Thank you. I appreciate you having me. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.